The Life of Monkey D. Luffy, Part 3, One Piece. Previously on the Amagi. After Arabasta, the crew find themselves on the sky island Skypia, where they face the false god that rules the skies, Enel. Afterwards, the Straw Hat Pirates land safely back into Blue Sea and reach Water 7, where they find themselves making enemies with the Frankie family and CP9 of the world government. And now we're here. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Monkey D. Luffy, Part 3. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. And also make sure you're subscribed because YouTube has been doing this thing where it's randomly unsubscribing people from channels, and y'all should double check that for real. Lastly, the Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media accounts. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Thriller Bark Saga, Thriller Bark Arc. After sailing for some time on the Thousand Sunny, Luffy and the rest of the crew found themselves in the presence of a ghost ship. Wanting to explore the ship, Luffy along with Sanji and Nami climbed aboard. There they met a skeleton named Brook. When Luffy asked him to join his crew, the skeleton eagerly accepted. Luffy then brought Brook back to the Thousand Sunny to show to the rest of the crew, much to their dismay. Over dinner, Brook explained his past, and later explained that he really can't join Luffy due to his current condition of having his shadow stolen. Luffy, really wanting to have Brook as a member, promised to get Brook's shadow back no matter what. This pleased Brook so much that the skeleton decided to perform before the crew with his violin, revealing he's a musician. Just as Brook was about to perform, a ghost appeared, as well as the gates of a strange island. Thriller Bark. These events prompted Brook to head to the island before Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats' eyes. With Luffy's resolve to go to the island to get his long-awaited musician, in fact nearly since the beginning of his journey, and to explore the island, Frankie and Robin decided to join him also. After witnessing Frankie's present to the Straw Hats, Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats decided to look for Nami, Usopp, and Chopper, who had not returned. However, before Luffy and the rest could go to the island, they were stopped by an invisible thing. After the Thousand Sunny got caught in what was apparently a spiderweb, Luffy and the rest descended to the island. There they met the Cerberus, which Luffy thought of eating, soon followed by even more strange creatures. At one point they came across some ghosts, one of which Luffy tried to catch. The ghost was unaffected and instead passed through Luffy and temporarily drained his will to go on. After recovering, the group meets with some zombies. Luffy and the rest defeat the zombies with a combo technique. Luffy then asks the zombies about his 3 friends that came by earlier. The zombies inadvertently revealed that they attacked them when they showed up. For this, Luffy and the rest shoved the zombies back into the graves headfirst. The group then met with Spoil, a zombie-looking old man who asked them to defeat Gecko Moria, who had stolen his shadow and the shadows of others like him. Robin then explained that Moria was a Shichibukai with a former bounty higher than Luffy's. With plans to actually beat Moria, Luffy agreed to help the old man and the others who had their shadows stolen. As it began to rain, Luffy and the others discovered that Thriller Bark was actually a ship. With their goal in mind, they ventured into Moria's mansion. Inside the mansion, Luffy and the others fought against the zombies in the dining hall. After the battle, he and the others noticed that Sanji was missing. With nothing else to do in the room, Luffy and the others decided to take Buhichuk, the leader of the zombies in the room, along in order to have him guide them to the rest of their friends. As Luffy left the room, the zombies told him to be scared of Moria's wrath for what Luffy and his friends did in the dining hall. Luffy, in response, merely replied that he will kick Moria's ass. After walking a while with Buhichuk as their hostage, Luffy, Robin, and Frankie suddenly noticed that Zoro was missing too. The situation was beginning to become suspicious. Later, Luffy found a suit of armor and decided to don it. After a while, the three came upon an arena-like area. There, Luffy and Robin witnessed the bout between Frankie and a general zombie. After watching it for a while, Luffy's group were suddenly trapped in the room by Buhichuk. There, they were forced to fight a large group of general zombies. In the middle of the battle, Luffy found himself face to face with a general zombie with 3 swords like Zoro. Before Luffy could get a clear answer from Jigoro, who was caught off guard by some spider mice zombies, Luffy was then sealed in a coffin by the spider mice with their webbing, and was then sent to the main mast of Thriller Bark. Luffy was brought afterwards before Gecko Moria. After being stripped of his armor, Luffy had his shadow stolen by Moria through the use of the power of the devil fruit Moria ate, the Kage no Mi. Upon being separated from his shadow, Luffy fell into a coma. With Luffy's shadow in Moria's hands, Moria decided to put it in the 900th zombie, Oars. Having his shadow finished being extracted, Luffy was then brought back to the Thousand Sunny by some spider mice. After being placed in the Thousand Sunny's kitchen along with Sanji and Zoro, Usopp managed to wake them up, after being briefed on what happened while they were out. With Nami and 3 of their shadows taken, Luffy and the others planned to take them back. Luffy was then informed by Frankie of Brook's relationship with Laboon. Even more excited by this information, Luffy is even more decided to have the skeleton join their crew. With this, Luffy and his crew decided to take back from Moria what he stole from them and their friends, with the determination to get everything back before dawn arrives. Luffy and his crew split into 2 teams, with part of his team headed to save Nami and himself headed to defeat Moria. Luffy's team purified several zombies with some salt from Usopp. As they rampaged through and purified Moria's zombie horde, Luffy and Sanji unfortunately got subdued by more of Perona's ghosts. Fortunately, however, they were saved by the rest of the team before the zombies could get to them. Just as things were getting chaotic enough, Oars, the zombie with Luffy's shadow, came crashing into the part of the building Luffy's team was in, and separated part of the building as well as part of Luffy's team. With only Robin and Chopper left with him, Luffy and the 2 decided to continue towards Moria, seeing that the others would not be beaten so easily. As the 3 continued onward, they were stopped in Moria's dance hall by Hogback and Sindri. Fortunately, however, Robin and Chopper were able to hold off these 2 long enough for Luffy to slip past them. Luffy finally reached Moria, and after a short conversation, started attacking the Shichibukai. However, as soon as Luffy threw a punch, Moria used his own shadow, Doppelman, to fight in his stead. Undeterred by this seemingly invincible being, Luffy was still able to land a hit on Moria himself by attacking the Shichibukai from an indirect place. However, despite using this tactic for some time, Luffy was still unable to land a direct clean hit on Moria. This continued until Oars came back to the freezer and started obeying Moria's orders fully. Once Moria gave Oars the order to completely annihilate all of the Straw Hats, the zombie began to attack Luffy. Luffy dodged the blow and started to chase after Moria, who had decided to run away from the chaos that was about to ensue. As Luffy chased after Moria, he was led deep within the forest of Thriller Bark. However, as Luffy was chasing Moria, the Shichibukai tricked Luffy into chasing Doppelman. Upon realizing what happened, Luffy was left stranded in the middle of the forest. Seeing that dawn was fast approaching, Luffy immediately tried to find his way back to the masked mansion. However, while running around lost in the forest, Luffy encountered the group that the old man, Spoil, was head of, the Thriller Bark Victims Association. With some convincing by the members of the association, the Risky Bros of the Rolling Pirates, Luffy was told that they knew a way to beat Moria. Through some explanations by the Risky Brothers' Captain Lola, Luffy was told of the process of using captured shadows to power oneself up for 10 minutes. Luffy was implanted with 100 shadows that the Thriller Bark Victims Association had collected over the years and became a vastly larger blue being that was dubbed Nightmare Luffy. With this newfound strength and skills bestowed by the shadows, Luffy rushed off to Masked Mansion, where Oars and Moria were battling against his crew and Brook. Arriving just in the nick of time to save both Nami and Usopp from Oars, Luffy immediately started battling against the zombie. He easily overpowered him with his devastating attacks, wounding Moria as a result as well. With the execution of his final move, Gomu Gomu no Storm, Luffy's 10-minute limit was up. However, Luffy had inflicted so much damage onto Oars that the behemoth completely toppled over into the Masked Mansion. Though Luffy was exhausted by having so many shadows implanted within him, the battle was still not over, for Oars rose back up to continue battling on. Despite their wounds, Luffy, his crew, and Brook rose back up as well and started one last combined attack against the zombie. While the rest of his crew began to restrict Oars' movement, Luffy was brought to the top of Thriller Bark with help from Brooks' high jumps and Robin's ability. At the top, Luffy was then thrown down towards a restricted Oars. As Luffy fell, he activated Gear 3 and landed a crippling blow to Oars, shattering the zombie's spine and rendering him incapable of moving anymore. Despite Luffy's strong will within him, Oars was no longer able to move. However, while Oars was indeed finally defeated, Luffy and the other shadowless victims still had to get Moria to return all of their shadows before the rising dawn incinerated them. Unfortunately, despite receiving the blunt of Luffy's attack, Gekko Moria managed to rise back up, and instead of giving back their shadows, the Shichibukai replied with his horrifying technique, Shadows Asgard. Despite Moria's transformation into a giant monstrosity, time getting dangerously over before dawn, and all the fatigue and wounds from earlier, Luffy readied himself to fight Moria one last time. As Luffy battled against Moria to the limit, with Gear 2 techniques that made Moria spew out some shadows, dawn was quickly approaching. Eventually, with time practically almost over, Luffy decided to stack his gear transformations on top of one another in order to perform a reckless move, Gomu Gomu no Gigant Jet Shell, to use against Moria. as Luffy attacked Moria with his move, and just as the first signs of dawn started to incinerate both Luffy and the others, Luffy asked his own shadow to come back to him if it wanted to become Pirate King. Then, with one last use of Gomu Gomu no Gigant Jet Shell, Luffy was able to topple down Moria, unable to hold his stolen shadows any longer. With this, Luffy's shadow and all of the other shadows of those in Thriller Bark returned to their original owners just in time to save them. With everyone's shadows finally returned and Moria finally defeated, Luffy collapsed from all of the fatigue and pain he experienced from the night beforehand. While things seemed finally over, the celebration was however cut short with the arrival of Bartholomew Kuma. The second Shichibukai, having seen and reported the whole event to the world government, was ordered to take out Luffy as well as eliminate everyone else on the island who witnessed Luffy's victory over Moria. The battle for an unconscious Luffy then ensued between the second Shichibukai and everyone else left standing willing to protect Luffy. In the end, Zoro asked if he could exchange his life for Luffy's. Impressed by Zoro's loyalty, Kuma pushed all of the pain from the battle from Luffy's body with his ability and implanted it into Zoro to make him feel Luffy's pain. After Kuma left and a day of rest went by, an energetic Luffy decided to celebrate their victory with everyone. As the party went on, Luffy noticed Brook playing a familiar song on a piano. Remembering that this was a song that Shanks and his crew used to sing all the time, Luffy got into a conversation with Brook. As Brook played and the conversation went on, Luffy once again asked Brook to join his crew. Brook once again turned down Luffy's offer since the skeleton still had some things to do. Knowing what he was talking about, Luffy revealed to Brook that not only did he learn about the skeleton's relationship with Laboon, but also told him that Laboon was alive and well. Having told Brook this, Luffy touched Brook's heart and made the skeleton burst into tears of joy. As the party got more joyous, with Brook bringing out a tone dial with the last musical performance of the Rumbar Pirates on it, Luffy was asked by Brook if he could join his crew. For this, Luffy casually agreed, much to the shock of most of the crew. With this very casual acceptance, Luffy finally got the musician he so longed for since his journey as a pirate began. After 2 days of recuperation, Luffy and his crew decided to leave Thriller Bark for Fishman Island. As they were about to leave, they were introduced to the concept of the Vivre card by Lola. Remembering the piece of paper that Ace gave to him, Luffy took out the Vivre card that his brother gave to him. Upon taking it out, however, Luffy noticed that Ace's Vivre card was burning a little and becoming smaller. With this, Luffy was explained that Ace's life was slowly vanishing. Dismissing the Vivre card's state as Ace having his own adventure, Luffy and his crew sailed away from Thriller Bark and onto Fishman Island. Summit War Saga, Sabaody Archipelago Arc. After several days of traversing the dangers and wonders of the Grand Line, the Straw Hats became overjoyed when they finally reached the Red Line. Luffy, Robin, and Brook attempted to get down to Fishman Island in the Shark Submerged III, but the submarine couldn't go that far down and they were chased back up by a sea bunny. After returning to the Sunny, Luffy defeated the sea bunny with one punch, causing it to spit out a mermaid named Kami and a talking starfish named Papag onto the Sunny's deck. To thank Luffy for saving her, Kami offered the Straw Hats some takoyaki. Luffy examined her and Papag with great curiosity, not having realized he had already met a mermaid in Kokoro. He was eager to receive the takoyaki, but when Kami called her partner Hachan, she found out that he had been kidnapped by the Macro Pirates and the Flying Fish Riders. Nami volunteered the crew to rescue him, and Luffy instantly agreed when he heard about Hachan's takoyaki making skills. Kami called Fish to direct them towards the Flying Fish Riders' hideout, and Luffy learned that the group was one of the many kidnapping gangs around the Sabaody Archipelago, being led by Duval. Some Flying Fish Riders then arrived and started attacking the Sunny, but quickly retreated. The Sunny then reached the Flying Fish Riders' base, which appeared abandoned. The Straw Hats approached a cage containing Hachan, and Luffy and his first 4 crewmates recognized him, becoming hesitant to rescue him. However, when Kami and Papag went to save Hachan and were caught by the Macro Pirates, the Straw Hats decided to save Hachan as Luffy freed Kami and Papag from the Macro Pirates' grasp. The Flying Fish Riders then emerged from the ocean to attack, and Luffy hijacked one of the flying fish. However, the flying fish were then ordered to go underwater, forcing Luffy's crewmates to rescue him. One Flying Fish Rider charged towards the Sunny with a giant mace, and on Sanji's command, Luffy knocked out the fish while Sanji took down the rider, and Luffy put the fish on the deck to eat for dinner. Luffy watched as Brook put several more riders to sleep with his music and tried hijacking another flying fish, but ended up crashing into Duval's room. In the room, Luffy saw Duval without his mask on before Duval put it on and confronted him. Luffy was chased back outside by Duval and his bison, Motobaro, and as Duval angrily confronted Sanji, Luffy hit his mask off to reveal that Duval's face resembled the one on Sanji's wanted poster. Duval had the Flying Fish Riders put a steel net around Sanji before throwing him into the sea. and Zoro had to hold Luffy back from jumping in after him. Luffy then watched in awe as Kami raced to save Sanji, and frankly blew apart the Flying Fish Rider's base with the Sunny's cannon. Duval then prepared to charge at Luffy with Motobaro, but with just a few words, Luffy managed to cause the Bison to turn around and fall unconscious. Sanji then told Luffy to let him finish off Duval, and the former proceeded to do so. Afterwards, the Straw Hats gorged on takoyaki that Hachan, Kami, and Papag made for them, and Duval and the newly renamed Rosy Life Riders came to thank them for Sanji changing Duval's face to give him a new appearance. After the meal, Papag told the Straw Hats that they would need to give the Sunny a special coating to sail down to Fishman Island and into the New World, and they could get this at the Sabaody Archipelago. They soon reached Sabaody, and Luffy marveled at the bubbles coming out of the ground. Hachan said he would take the Straw Hats to a good coating mechanic, but insisted that they not defy any world nobles they encountered. Luffy, Chopper, and Brook went shopping with Kami, Papag, and Hachan, and eventually saw a slave attempting to run away. However, the collar around the slave's neck then exploded, and when his masters Saint Shalaria and Saint Roseward came up to him, they shot him. This enraged Luffy, but Papag warned him that attacking a world noble would result in a marine admiral being summoned. Luffy's group was attacked by several bounty hunters, but he, Chopper, and Brook dispatched them with ease. They then arrived at Grove 13, where they entered Shaki's ripoff bar to find the coder. The owner, Shakiyaku, knew who Luffy and his crewmates were and figured they had come to find Rayleigh. She revealed that he had been away for 6 months, but said he'd like to go to the Sabaody amusement park, revealing there were 9 other pirates there with bounties over 100 million berries, including one man with a bounty higher than Luffy's. Luffy's group then headed to Sabaody Park, where they enjoyed the rides and attractions. However, Kami ended up being kidnapped by the Hound Pets while the rest of the group went to get ice cream, and Luffy, Papag, and Hachan ran off to find her. The 3 of them searched human shops looking to find Kami, and Papag and Hachan told Luffy about the discrimination fishmen and merfolk faced there. The Rosy Life Riders then came to pick them up to bring them to the human auctioning house, where Kami was being sold, and Luffy and his rider picked up Zoro on the way there. They end up crashing through the door right as Kami was being sold on stage, and Luffy rushed to her despite Hachan trying to hold him back. Luffy eventually got past Hachan but looked back and saw the fishman being shot by the world noble Saint Charlos. He then walked back up towards the 2 of them, and despite Hachan's pleas not to go against the world noble, Luffy went up to Charlos and punched him in the face, sending him crashing through several benches and knocking him unconscious. Luffy apologized for going against Hachan's orders, but his crew immediately joined him in attacking the guards and attempting to free Kami. During the chaos, Silver's Rayleigh came out from backstage and used Haoshoku Haki to knock out almost everyone, including all the guards and world nobles, and he had told Luffy he had been looking forward to meeting him. Rayleigh freed Kami of her slave collar and said he would talk with Luffy later, as the Marines had surrounded the auction house and Rayleigh had no intention of confronting them. The pirate, Eustace Kid, told his fellow supernovas, Luffy and Trafalgar Law, that he and his crew would confront the Marines themselves, but the 2 of them immediately went out to join Kid. The Marines shot mortars at the 3 of them, but they each used their Devil Fruit powers to redirect the shots back at them. The supernovas then went on the offensive and decided to meet back up in the New World as their crews joined them in decimating the Marines before heading off separately. The Straw Hats and their allies went to Rayleigh, where they parted ways with the Rosy Life Riders before going back to Shaki's bar. Rayleigh revealed that he was Gold D. Roger's first mate, and told the Straw Hats the truth about Roger's final voyage and execution. When Usopp asked Rayleigh about the One Piece, Luffy loudly stopped him, not wanting to have the treasure spoiled for him. Rayleigh liked Luffy's attitude and agreed to coat the Sunny for free, saying it would take him 3 days. The Straw Hats received a Viver card from Rayleigh to reunite with him at that time, and they headed out with the objective to survive the Marine onslaught until then. However, the Straw Hats were immediately confronted by a pacifista that they mistook for Bartholomew Kuma. The pacifista shot a beam at them, and after finding out who Kuma was and what he did on Thriller Bark, Luffy decided to go all out as he activated Gear 2. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji performed some of the strongest attacks simultaneously on the pacifista, but only knocked it into a building without damaging it much. It soon got back up and overwhelmed Zoro, but the Straw Hats unleashed consecutive powerful attacks on it, ending with Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Gigant rifle, which successfully took it down. The Straw Hats tried to rest, only to be immediately confronted by the Marine Science Unit Commander, Sentomaru, and another pacifista, PX-1. Since they were in no shape to continue fighting, Luffy decided to have the crew split up and run away, telling them to reunite at the Sunny in 3 days. Luffy ran off with Ramen and Chopper, but Sentomaru confronted them, and he used Busoshoku Haki in his palm strikes to hurt Luffy. Luffy then saw the Marine Admiral Kizaru attacking Zoro, But before Kizaru could finish Zoro off, Rayleigh came in and intercepted his attack. Luffy told Usopp and Brook to take Zoro and run away, knowing that all of them were too weak to beat the enemies in front of them. However, he watched as his crewmates were overwhelmed by PX-4 while he was slammed into the ground by Sentomaru. In the midst of this onslaught, the real Bartholomew Kuma appeared, and Luffy watched as he transported Zoro to another place. Sentomaru told Luffy what Kuma had done, and after Kuma transported PX-1 away as well, Luffy yelled at his crew again to run, as it was all they could do at this point. However, it was not enough as Kuma sent Brook, Usopp, and Sanji flying away as well. Kuma repelled an attack from Luffy before sending Frankie and Nami away, and Luffy was unable to do anything as the Shichibukai finished the job, making Chopper and Robin disappear. With everyone gone, Luffy started breaking down over his inability to save his crew, and Kuma told him that they would not see each other again as he sent Luffy away from Sabaody. Summoned War Saga, Amazon Lily Arc. Luffy was sent flying upon Kuma's touch, and flew for days until he landed on the island Amazon Lily. He decided to use Rayleigh's Vivre card to head back to Sabaody, but collapsed after running into a cliff face and unsuccessfully trying to destroy it. After killing and eating a boar, Luffy found some mushrooms and ate those as well. However, he ate a body mushroom, which caused mushrooms to grow from his body and threaten his life. He was discovered by Marguerite, Sweet Pea, and Apolinio, and they took him to the village. There, they burned the mushrooms off of Luffy and took him to the river to wash him. There, when Sweet Pea mistook Luffy's crotch for a mushroom, Elder Nyon revealed to the citizens, who were all females, that Luffy was a man. Luffy was put in a cell, and after waking up, he took back his straw hat from the Amazon Lily citizens as they ogled at him. They gave him some clothes, and when he reacted negatively to their feminine design, the women got angry and decided to execute him. Intent on returning to his crew, Luffy destroyed the roof of his cell with a kick and escaped. After being slammed to the ground by Apolinio, Luffy realized he needed to recover Rayleigh's Vivre card from his trousers. Upon seeing Marguerite with them, he grabbed her and scaled the cliff around the village, returning to the woods. Marguerite gave him the Vivre card, and after Luffy revealed that he was a pirate, Marguerite told him about the Empress Boa Hancock, who is also a pirate. Marguerite helped Luffy remove the frills from his clothes, and he asked if she could give him a boat to leave, to which she replied that Amazon Lily was located in the Calm Belt. Luffy decided to build a raft, but it quickly fell apart, and after saving him, Marguerite decided to kill him to avoid becoming attached. Luffy dodged Marguerite's arrows, which possessed considerable power due to being imbued with Busoshoku Haki, and the latter's comrades arrived to reinforce her. Luffy managed to escape by climbing back up the mountain overlooking the village, and he decided to find an important person to help him by going to a tall building. He jumped onto the roof of Hancock's palace, but ended up breaking through it and falling into Hancock's bath, where he saw a mark on her back. Hancock's sisters, Boa Sandersonia and Boa Marigold, then came in, and the three of them said Luffy would have to die for seeing Hancock's back. Hancock attempted to turn Luffy to stone with her Mero Mero no Mi powers, which had no effect on Luffy as he mistook them for Foxy's Noro Noro beams. Luffy then jumped out of the palace but was shot by Hancock's kiss and was captured by the Kuja upon falling to the ground. Luffy was put into an arena, and Hancock refused to believe his account of how he got to Amazon Lily. Marguerite, Sweet Pea, and Apolinio then pleaded on Luffy's behalf, but Hancock turned them to stone. She then released the panther Bakura to attack Luffy, but Luffy defeated it with one punch. Luffy was enraged with the spectators for laughing at Hancock's actions towards Marguerite's group, being unaffected by Hancock's charms. Hancock then sent Sandersonia and Marigold to the ring to kill Luffy, and they used their devil fruit powers to transform into snakes. Luffy struggled against the two sisters as they dodged his attacks with Kenbun Shuku Haki and hurt him with Busoshoku Haki, and they decided to punish him further to destroy the statues of Marguerite's group. Luffy desperately yelled at them to stop, which unbeknownst to him exerted Haoshoku Haki that stopped the Gorgon sisters in their tracks and knocked out several Kuja in the audience. Deciding to go all out, Luffy activated Gear 2, and its speed was enough to overwhelm Sandersonia's Kenbun Shoku Haki, as well as overpower Marigold's Busoshoku Haki. The Gorgon sisters then unleashed their ultimate attacks as Sandersonia turned her hair into Yamata no Orochi, and Marigold turned hers into flaming salamanders, but Luffy destroyed all of them with Gomu Gomu no Jet Gatling, and managed to tie the sisters' tails together, sending Sandersonia falling towards the spike pit around the arena. She grabbed the edges of the arena, and Luffy realized that her clothes had been burned off, causing him to climb on her exposed back to cover the mark on it. After realizing what he had done, Hancock had the Kuja evacuate the arena. Hancock told Luffy that she would either return Marguerite's group to normal or give him a way to leave the island, and Luffy chose the former, becoming overjoyed when Marguerite was depetrified. Luffy was taken back to Hancock's palace, and inside a chamber, Hancock revealed that the mark on her back was the hoof of the soaring dragon. which signified that one was a slave of the world nobles. She revealed that she and her sisters were once slaves on Marineford before being freed, and the Kuja believed the marked spots to be cursed Gorgonized because of the mark's shame. Having taken a liking to Luffy after finding out that he had attacked the world noble, Hancock offered to take him wherever he wanted to go. After requesting to go to Sabaody starting the next day, Luffy partied with the Kuja, but had to run away after they started wanting to touch him. He came to Elder Nyon, who revealed that Hancock was a member of the Shichibukai. Nyon then told him the news about Ace's imprisonment and impending execution, and a shocked Luffy decided to put his return to the crew on hold to save his brother. Nyon told him that it would take a week to reach Impel Down with a pirate ship, but a marine ship could get there in 4 days. This caused Luffy to request that Hancock accept the marine summons to come to Ace's execution, and Hancock, who unbeknownst to Luffy was afflicted by lovesickness for him, readily agreed. Luffy hid under Hancock's robes as she boarded the marine battleship and made arrangements to stop at Impel Down. Summit War Saga, Impel Down Arc. Luffy hid in Hancock's room as the marine battleship headed for Impel Down, and she requested large meals so he could eat. As they arrived at the Great Prison, Luffy was awed by the number of battleships stationed there. He hid under Hancock's mantle as she disembarked and headed for the prison, but she revealed to him that the workers would be doing a full-body check of her. Upon entering the prison and going to be inspected, Hancock petrified the vice head jailer Domino and the security cameras to allow Luffy to go in undetected, and she made him promise to not cause too much ruckus. Luffy hid in the ceiling rafters as Hancock was accompanied into the prison. Luffy followed Ace's Vivre card and snuck through a gate to level 1 after it was opened by some guards chasing a prisoner. The prisoners in level 1 begged Luffy to free them when Luffy noticed Buggy being chased by the Blue Gory. Intent on not getting caught, Luffy and Buggy worked together to attack the Blue Gory. Luffy ended up defeating all 5 Blue Gory. Luffy decided to give Buggy the armband immediately, but in their race down the corridor, Buggy ended up crashing into the wall. Thinking they needed to go through the wall, Luffy punched through it, sending him and Buggy into the guard's room before breaking through another wall into a forest of spikes. Luffy flew on Buggy's back over the spiked floor until they reached the pit leading to level 2, which was filled with stronger criminals and worse tortures. Luffy immediately jumped into the pit, with Buggy following him soon after. Upon arriving at level 2, Luffy and Buggy immediately encountered the Basilisk, which Luffy managed to defeat with Gear 3. The prisoners then asked the duo to free them, and Luffy angrily pulled Buggy aside when the latter did that instead of helping him. Buggy admitted that he had no idea how to get to level 3 and that he was planning on ditching Luffy, only to renege on this statement when all of the prisoners he freed had abandoned him. Galdino, formerly known as Mr. 3, then came and offered to help them. The trio were later chased by multiple other beasts, including the bosses of the level, the Manticores. Galdino found out that Luffy was attempting to go deeper rather than escape, and unsuccessfully tried to leave, causing him to take Luffy to a staircase going to level 3. The staircase was guarded by the Sphinx, which Luffy only made angrier with his attacks. Galdino distracted the Sphinx with wax replicas of himself, but its attacks caused the floor to cave in, sending it and Luffy's group down to level 3. Luffy, Buggy, Galdino, and the Sphinx landed in level 3, a dry and hot wasteland known as Starvation Hell. However, they were swiftly caught in a giant net made of sea stone and confronted by the chief guard, Saldeth. Their entrapment didn't last long though, as the Sphinx regained consciousness and tore apart the net. Luffy saw that Buggy and Galdino had gone up to try to escape, and he thanked them for bringing him here as he proceeded to fight through the Blue Gory and Sphinx on his way to level 4. Luffy got away from the scuffle, but had to deal with some guards and traps before being confronted again by the Sphinx. However, Luffy then saw Mr. 2, Bon Kure, with Zoro's face, leap in and attack the beast. Working together, Luffy and Bon Kure defeated the Sphinx, and they happily embraced as Bon Kure stated that he wanted to find someone on level 5 as well. Luffy and Bon Kure fought through more Blue Gory before being confronted by the Minotaurus of the Jailer Beasts. The two of them were initially injured by Minotaurus' spiked club, but Luffy used Jet Bazooka to send it flying a great distance away. Bon Kure then guided Luffy to a well tower that overlooked level 4, a blazing inferno that created the heat in level 3. Luffy asked Bon Kure whom he wanted to find, and the latter replied that he wished to meet Eva the Okama Queen. However, they were then joined by Buggy and Galdino, who were being chased by Minotaurus. Each member of the party used strong attacks on it, concluding with Luffy reinforcing his arm with Galdino's candle lock to defeat the beast. Luffy and Bon Kure prepared to head into level 4, much to Buggy and Galdino's horror. However, the floor fell out from under them as a result of their attacks, causing all of them to plunge down to level 4. After avoiding landing in the boiling pool of blood, Luffy decided to race in the direction of the kitchen because of its good smell, and Bon Kure followed him. However, after defeating several more guards, Luffy was confronted by the warden, Magellan. Bonkore warned him to run away from Magellan and his Doku Doku no Mi, and Luffy was forced to run away from Magellan's poisonous Hydra heads. He swung across a flaming pit to get away, but Magellan spit a poison ball at him that created an explosion and overwhelmed his senses. Magellan then moved through a poison pathway to get to Luffy, and Luffy dodged his attacks as he continued to be afflicted by the poison ball. Intent on rescuing Ace, Luffy then went on the offensive and hit Magellan with Jet Bazooka, but this resulted in his arms being covered with Magellan's poison. Luffy attempted to attack Magellan further, but was always met with the warden's poisonous creations and eventually hit by more poison. Magellan also breathed poisonous mist into the air, disorienting Luffy and causing his attacks to fly into empty space. Luffy kept fighting for as long as he could, but was eventually overwhelmed by the vast number of poisons in his body. At Magellan's command, he was brought into the freezing wasteland of level 5 to die. After regaining consciousness, Luffy tried crawling towards Ace and refused to die, but could barely move and quickly passed out again. Bonkore then found him and dragged him to try to find Eva, but was attacked by wolves. However, Luffy came to and bit a wolf as he proceeded to knock all of them out with a shout before passing out again. Luffy and Bonkore were found by Emporio Ivankov, the Eva Bonkore was looking for, as well as Inazuma. Luffy pleaded with Ivankov to save Bonkore, causing Ivankov to decide to help Luffy as well. Ivankov took Luffy to level 5.5, his new Kama land, and had Luffy chained to a platform as he explained his treatment. By taking away 10 years from Luffy's life, he would give him a slim chance of surviving the poison. He then injected healing hormones into Luffy, and Luffy was consumed by pain and anguish. Inazuma projected it would last for 2.5 days. However, Luffy managed to successfully complete the process in 20 hours, and he pressed against the door, keeping him in the chamber as he was desperately hungry. Luffy ate days worth of rations for over 30 minutes before he fully recovered, and he thanked Ivankov and Bonkore for saving him and propelling him to recovery. He asked if Ivankov was going to escape now, and Ivankov said the time wasn't right yet. But Luffy then revealed that Dragon was his father, astonishing Ivankov, who revealed that he was a comrade of Dragon's in the Revolutionary Army. Ivankov then agreed to accompany Luffy to rescue Ace, and injected adrenaline hormones into Luffy that would keep him active for a day. Luffy, Ivankov, and Inazuma then headed out and raced through level 5, beating the wolves in their way. They then approached and entered a gate leading to level 6, a level shrouded in secrecy where Ace was being kept. Luffy, Ivankov, and Inazuma fought their way to level 6, only to find out that they were too late, with the prisoner Jinbei revealing that Ace had just been taken to be executed. The prison guards then blocked off the lift and the stairs and unleashed sleeping gas into the room, but Inazuma blocked the gas with his Choki Choki no Mi abilities, although this blocked off the stairs even more. Ivankov told Luffy that Ace was already on his way to Marineford, and it was best to give up and let Whitebeard rescue him. But Luffy refused and was intent on going to Marineford. Crocodile then offered to help Luffy escape through the ceiling, and Luffy was surprised to see the former Shichibukai imprisoned here, refusing Crocodile's offer because of his actions on Arabasta. However, Ivankov told Luffy that he knew a secret about Crocodile that would keep him under control. Jinbei then asked Luffy to free him, saying that he wanted to help save Ace as well, and Luffy agreed to this as his group freed Jinbei and Crocodile from their cells. Inazuma created a pathway to the ceiling with his powers, and the group broke through into level 5. They then raced up the stairs to level 4 and fought the guards there as they were joined by prisoners who were freed by Buggy and Galdino, as well as Dad's Bones, who had been freed by his boss Crocodile. Luffy was told to go on to level 3 in the midst of the skirmish, but turned back as he saw the jailer beasts attacking the escaped prisoners, and he and Jinbei and Crocodile defeated the jailer beasts all together at once. The group was then confronted by the chief guard Sadi, but Ivankov threw Luffy forward to get him to keep going. Luffy was confronted by the vice warden Hannibal, who refused to let him pass, and despite Luffy hitting him with multiple attacks, Hannibal refused to go down and kept attacking. However, Hannibal was then brought down by Marshal D. Teach, and Luffy realized that he was the Blackbeard that had captured Ace. Blackbeard said that fate was on Luffy's side when Ace prevented the former from hunting down the latter as he had originally intended, but Luffy responded by punching him. As Luffy charged to attack again, Blackbeard slammed him into the ground, injuring him with his Yami Yami no Mi abilities. Jinbei then prevented Luffy from attacking Blackbeard further, and Luffy was compelled to head for level 3 as Blackbeard and his crew went on to continue the execution of their plan. Luffy's group made it to level 3 and stormed their way through the Impel down forces to level 2. While fighting the Manticores, Luffy found out that Ivankov and Inazuma were facing Magellan and had wanted to go back and help, but was held back. His group then reunited with Buggy and Galdino right as Magellan arrived at level 2, and Galdino used his wax to block the Warden's poison hydra from hitting Luffy. Luffy then got an idea to fight Magellan together with Galdino, and Galdino created wax armor to put around Luffy's arms and legs. Luffy then successfully punched Magellan with the wax, protecting him from the poison. However, Magellan countered with Kinjite, a poison strong enough to destroy objects, forcing Luffy and Galdino to run away. They arrived at the outside of the prison, but Bonkure told Luffy that they had not managed to get a ship yet. Ivankov and Inazuma then arrived, having survived Magellan's poison. And Luffy got in contact with Jinbei, who told his group to jump into the sea. Luffy and Galdino worked together to force back Magellan's Venom Demon. And Luffy had Ivankov blow all the prisoners towards the sea with his Hellwing. When the prisoners were over the water, Jinbei called a school of whale sharks to carry them to the battlefield that he had commandeered. Luffy and the prisoners celebrated as they reached the battleship, but soon found themselves under attack from the other marine battleships. They then faced another problem as the gates of justice were closed, preventing them from leaving Impel down. However, Jinbei continued ahead at full speed, and as the gates suddenly opened, he revealed to Luffy that Bonkure had stayed behind to open it. Luffy wanted to go back and rescue him, but Jinbei stated that this was impossible and leaving him behind was necessary. Jinbei then gave Luffy a baby Den Den Mushi to contact Bonkure, and he and the other prisoners tearfully thanked him as their ship managed to get out of Impel Down right before the gate was closed. As he wept over Bonkure, Luffy punched Buggy for taking the Okama's fate lightly, and he also talked to Jinbei, whom he found out was a Shichibukai. Marine headquarters then called the battleship, and Luffy answered it. They identified him and Buggy as the co-instigators of the prison break, and said that they would have no chance of reaching Marineford. However, Luffy declared that he would save Ace no matter what, and when Buggy was hailed by the prisoners after it was revealed that he had served on Goldie Roger's crew, he changed his mind and agreed to go with Luffy to Marineford as well. Summit War Saga, Marineford Arc. The Impel Down escapee ship approached the gates of justice to Marineford, and to their surprise, the gates were opened immediately. Ivankov wondered if Dragon would come to save Ace, but Luffy revealed that Ace wasn't related to him by blood, and that Ace's father was Goldie Roger. Luffy tried looking for Marineford, but couldn't due to the thick fog. The escapee ship was suddenly carried by a giant wave heading towards Marineford created by Whitebeard, but the wave was frozen right above the island by Admiral Aokiji, leaving the escapees trapped on top of it. Luffy got the idea to free the battleship from the ice and slide down the back of the wave. However, after picking up a transmission revealing that Ace would be executed ahead of the scheduled time, the group tried to hurry and get the battleship out, which caused the ice below them to shatter and send them plummeting straight down onto the frozen Marineford Bay. By sheer luck, they ended up crashing into a marine battleship in a small unfrozen part of the bay, and Luffy stood on the battleship's wreckage as he called out to Ace. Crocodile attempted to attack Whitebeard, but Luffy kicked the former warlord away due to Ace caring about Whitebeard. Whitebeard told Luffy that he would be throwing his life away trying to rescue Ace, but Luffy didn't care and brashly told the Emperor that he would save Ace himself and become Pirate King. Surprising Whitebeard and earning his respect, Luffy told Whitebeard that Ace's execution time had been moved up, addressing the Emperor like an equal before running into the battlefield. Luffy was immediately met by Admiral Kizaru, but Ivankov redirected Kizaru's laser. As Luffy fought through dozens of marines, Hina attempted to ensnare him, but Luffy used his speed to evade her abilities. Gecko Moria then summoned a zombie army to attack Luffy, and Ace told Luffy to leave, claiming to not want his help. However, Luffy declared that he would rescue Ace and disregard any pirate code because he was Ace's little brother, and Jinbei took out Moria's zombies with a blast of seawater. As this occurred, Sengoku revealed to all that Luffy was just as dangerous as Ace, since he is the son of Revolutionary Dragon. Unfazed by his lineage being revealed, Luffy then took out a member of the giant squad with Gomu Gomu no Gigant rifle, saying he would save Ace even if it killed him. Luffy continued fighting through the marines, but right after forcing Tashigi aside, he was hit by Smoker. Smoker used his Moku Moku no Mi powers to make Luffy's attacks pass through him before pinning Luffy down with his Jite, but he was then kicked away by Hancock. Hancock gave Luffy the key to Ace's handcuffs, and he happily embraced her before running off. He ran into Ivankov confronting Bartholomew Kuma, and watched as the emotionless Shichibukai used his new pacifista modifications to attack. Luffy kept running, but then encountered Dracule Mihawk. Luffy attempted to avoid Mihawk, but the Shichibukai kept pace and hit him with a spinning air slash. Some of Ivankov's followers attempted to protect Luffy from Mihawk, but Mihawk quickly beat him. Luffy attempted to attack Mihawk, but cut it short upon realizing that his arms would be cut off. Mihawk was impressed at his clear-headed attitude and swung his sword at Luffy, who ducked as he saw the slash cleave through the frozen wave far away. Luffy was forced to avoid Mihawk's slashes, but ended up getting farther from Ace. He then pulled Buggy in front of him to intercept Mihawk's attacks, and was able to run away when Buggy attempted to attack Mihawk. After this, Luffy saw a vista of the Whitebeard pirates battling Mihawk. Luffy saw that the Marines were going to execute Ace very soon, but was met by Kizaru and kicked away at the speed of light. He tumbled over to Jinbei and some of the Whitebeard pirates' division commanders, and the commanders went to help Luffy by dealing with Kizaru. A short time later, Luffy watched in shock as Whitebeard was stabbed by his subordinate Squard. However, Whitebeard recovered and entered the fray, and Luffy was annoyed when the Emperor's Gura Gura no Mi ability shifted the ground and almost made him fall into the water. Luffy reached the edge of the bay and attempted to pull himself up to land, but was unable to due to the Marines raising an encircling wall. Luffy then watched in awe as Admiral Akainu unleashed magma meteors into the bay to melt the ice. Luffy raced towards an opening in the encircling wall, but was beaten back by the Marines lying in wait there. After landing near Ivankov and Jinbei, he asked them for a favor, and Jinbei sent him over the wall in a blast of seawater. Luffy landed in front of the 3 Marine Admirals, and although he couldn't harm them due to their Logia abilities, he activated Gear 2 to run past them. Kizaru quickly caught up to him and kicked him back, and Luffy was helpless as executioners started to execute Ace. However, Crocodile took out the executioners, but Luffy was then attacked by Aokiji, who injured him with an ice spear. Marco of the Whitebeard pirates stepped in and attacked Aokiji, allowing Luffy to go on. However, Luffy was overpowered by Vice Admirals Momonga and Dalmatian before being shot by Kizaru, who kicked him at light speed again. Luffy was caught by Whitebeard, who threw him to his subordinates for his wounds to be treated. Luffy refused to be sidelined, but soon collapsed from exhaustion. Ivankov came up to him, and Luffy requested to be injected with vigor hormones again. Ivankov initially refused, but Luffy didn't care about the dangerous consequences, and so received the injection, giving his body energy it was not equipped to handle. Luffy raced towards the execution platform again, but was immediately confronted by Kobe, who was determined to stop him. However, Luffy dealt with Kobe's Soru and defeated him with one punch. Luffy was then confronted by some Pacifista, but he was shielded by Hancock, who the Pacifista were unable to attack. The executioners then attempted to execute Ace again, and Luffy, who was still too far away, yelled at them to stop, unwittingly unleashing a large burst of House Shokuhaki that knocked them out. More Marines began targeting Luffy, but more of the Whitebeard pirates backed him up on orders from Whitebeard. Luffy was then attacked by Mihawk again, but Mihawk's strike was intercepted by Daz Bones, who along with Crocodile confronted him. As Luffy reached the bottom of the wall underneath the execution platform, Inazuma emerged from Ivankov's hair and created a ramp going up to the platform. Luffy ran up the ramp but was confronted by his grandfather, Garp, who couldn't let him pass. Garp said Luffy would have to beat him to rescue Ace, and Luffy activated Gear 2 and punched his grandfather off the ramp. Garp's arrival caused the ramp to break, but Luffy jumped off the falling pieces and made it to the execution platform. There, he was confronted by Fleet Admiral Sengoku, who turned into a giant Buddha, and Kizaru destroyed the key to Ace's handcuffs with a beam. Luffy then saw Galdino stirring from unconsciousness next to Ace, and he told the former Baroque Works agent to create a wax wall around Ace while Sengoku prepared to punch him. Luffy absorbed Sengoku's punch with Gomu Gomu no Gigan Fusen, and was pressed against the wax wall, causing the entire execution platform to start collapsing. As they were falling, Galdino gave Luffy a wax key to free Ace, and Luffy used it to unlock Ace's handcuffs, allowing Ace to shield them from the Marines' bazooka shots. Upon reaching the ground, Luffy and Ace worked in tandem to take down the Marines, and Ace protected Luffy from an attack by Aokiji. Luffy and Ace were then shocked as Whitebeard proclaimed that he would die to let everyone escape. Luffy was initially unable to get Ace to escape with him, but after Ace spoke with Whitebeard, the two brothers went on to move again. However, Ace turned around to confront Akainu after the Admiral degraded Whitebeard, and as he watched the two fight, Luffy dropped Ace's Vivre card. When he went to pick it up, Akainu swooped in to kill him, only for Ace to step in and take the blow. Jinbei stepped in to prevent Akainu from attacking Ace again, and the heavily injured Ace fell into Luffy's arms. As Luffy called out for medical attention, Ace told him to greet Dadan for him, and apologized that he would not see Luffy's dream come to fruition. He then thanked Luffy and the Whitebeard pirates for loving him before passing away, and as he kneeled over Ace's dead body, Luffy suffered a complete mental breakdown. Jinbei took the incapacitated Luffy away to protect him from Akainu, but they were confronted by the Admiral again as they neared the bay. Akainu managed to punch through Jinbei's body with a magma fist and hit Luffy, severely injuring his chest. Crocodile then stepped in and sent Luffy and Jinbei up in the air with a sand cyclone, where they were unwittingly caught by Buggy. Buggy took them to Trafalgar Law and the Heart Pirates, who had just arrived on their submarine, the Polar Tang. And Beppo took Luffy inside as the crew prepared to submerge. They were able to do so thanks to the intervention of Kobe and the Red Hair Pirates, and despite last-ditch attacks by Aokiji and Kizaru, The Polar Tang made it out of Marineford as Luffy was laid on a table to receive medical attention. Summit War Saga post-war arc. Luffy was next seen being treated for his injuries by Law's submarine. As he was being treated on Law's submarine, Law, Ivankov, Boa Hancock, and Jinbei commented on how much damage he had accumulated, and Jinbei worried about his reaction to all that had happened when he awakened. After 2 weeks of recovering from his injuries, Luffy awakens in Amazon Lily and goes on a rampage, blindly asking where Ace is. After remembering Ace's death little by little, while still destroying the rocks and the trees in the forest, he stops for a moment as Jinbei tries to explain to him that the war was over and Ace is dead. Luffy states he has realized that it wasn't a dream by pinching his cheek very hard and starts to finally cry and mourn over his loss. While weeping, he thinks back to when he first met Ace. After the flashback, he begins to doubt his abilities and starts to think about how he could possibly become the Pirate King if he's too weak. After that, Luffy has a little verbal and physical struggle against Jinbei, who told him not to regret his brother's death and that he has not lost everything yet. Luffy then remembers that he still has something priceless, his crew, and then declares that he wants to go to Sabaody Archipelago to meet his crewmates again. Soon after that, he meets Silver's Rayleigh and learns about his and Shaki's relationship, Nyon, Boa Hancock, and her sisters. Luffy asks if any of his crew had returned to Sabaody Archipelago, to which Rayleigh replied that they probably hadn't. After Rayleigh explained how he had learned Luffy was on Amazon Lily, Rayleigh explains that if Luffy went back to Sabaody, the same tragic events he suffered would occur again. Luffy then starts to listen to a proposition Rayleigh has for him. Although no word left from Luffy and Rayleigh, the word about Luffy being alive is being spread throughout the world. However, there's something lingering within the newspaper regarding actions of Luffy. The article revealed that Luffy actually infiltrated Marineford a second time, accompanied by Jinbei and Rayleigh. After they stole a marine ship, they circled Marineford once, which according to Lieutenant Commander Branu is a custom for burials at sea. Luffy then went into the plaza alone and rang the ox bell 16 times, threw a bouquet of flowers into the rubble, and then bowed his head in silent prayer, leaving promptly after. His goal from this was to send the message 3D21 to the other Straw Hats, meaning they would meet at Sabaody Archipelago not in 3 days, but in 2 years. Luffy is later seen on the Kuja Pirates ship, resting so he can recover from his injuries. The other Kuja Pirates are all at his bedside watching him under Hancock's orders while playing with his stretchy skin. Luffy then says that he hopes that his message reached his crewmates. Rayleigh then assured him that it would, since it was highly unlike him. Jinbei eventually left the Kuja ship while riding a whale shark after Luffy and Jinbei gave their thanks to each other, and Jinbei tells him that he will continue to aid Luffy later on in the future, and that he looks forward to meeting Luffy and his crew 2 years from now. Luffy eventually arrives on Rusakaina, a deserted island northwest of Amazon Lily, with the Kuja and Rayleigh, where he will train with Rayleigh alone. Rayleigh explains the 3 forms of haki while demonstrating them on a rampaging elephant. The demonstration excites Luffy and makes him eager to learn them. Luffy then puts his hat on a stone, which is the only safe spot on the dangerous island, with the Viver card, while saying that he'll take a vacation from being a pirate for some time. The story continues 2 years later in The Life of Monkey D. Luffy, Part 4. So, did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Thank you for watching. Adrian out.